You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
Before we start, no, that's a ridiculous thing to say. We have started, but we don't usually preempt who we're going to interview, although it's pretty obvious if you download it, you can see who we're going to interview. But we're going to interview Tim Watson-Munro, who is what is he, Ivan? He's a clinical forensic criminal forensic psychologist or something, and he's been all over the news about the disappearance of this woman in Ballarat called Samantha Murphy, and he profiles what makes people do the things they do. That's what he does. He's been all over the news, so we thought how topical that we interview him, so we're going to interview him later in the morning.
Very good.
That's Tim Watson-Munro, not to be confused with Tim Watson, who played football for Essendon and had the Brownlow medal taken off him for the most disgracefully stupid, corrupt, and immoral reasons ever, but that's the way the competition was run, under the auspices of some people who are not there anymore. Now, also, you might remember last week I said we were going to have a person on called Heidi Victoria, and I thought at 9 o'clock when she didn't turn up, I thought, well, that's interesting. She said she was going to turn up, and it got to 10:30, then it got to 11, and I thought, well, there you are. So I looked at the text that I had sent to her, and I thought, yeah, that's the time and everything, and I said, I'll get back to you with the details later about where it is. And of course I never sent the text. It was still on my phone, so I was about to I was about to take, I was about to just say, that's extraordinary. But that was my fault. So we did apologise on air, and I'm apologising now face to face with Heidi Victoria, who is sitting here opposite me. Let me tell you who Heidi Victoria is. She was a Liberal member for Bayswater in the Victorian Legislative Assembly from 2006 to 2018. She's a professional photographer, and she's in here today to be at a female. I presume she's a female. You can never be sure these days, but we're taking it on face value. I'm looking at her, she's a female. We're taking it on face value, she's a woman, and we thought that'd be good to have another gender besides Sue Stanley OAM, another gender on the panel. So welcome, Heidi.
Am I a token female today, Sam?
Well, no, if you just heard what I said, Heidi, I said we have Sue Stanley OAM. She's a female. I have no experience to tell you.
I'm going to wish you luck right now. If you can never get a word in, that'd be the first thing.
You might want to wish
good
Sam,
luck.
like you've got a former politician here at the microphone. Good morning, everybody.
Anyhow, thanks for coming in, Heidi. I notice... I don't know if... did you adopt the name Victoria just because you were a Victorian and in a Victorian parliament? Because your name was Mitterella. What was your name?
Mitterlehner.
Mitterlehner. You were married to Mr. Mitterlehner, were you?
No, that was my father.
Oh,
my maiden name is Mitterlehner, which is Austrian.
I see, and then
I married somebody with the surname Victoria.
Oh, I see.
So I did not change it for the sake of politics,
No?
which there was a rumour going round when I first ran for Parliament. They said, she must have changed it. But of course I worked under Ted Baillieu and Dennis Napthine and people like that. And when I was naughty, which wasn't very often, I've got to say, but Ted used to call me Heidi Queensland. So that was, he had a wicked sense of humour.
Well, I got that completely around the wrong way. Incidentally, we read out comments that people make on the social media, and we 99% of them are fantastic, but we don't like to highlight the people who give us a belting because that encourages people to give us a belting because they think they're going to hear their name. But I must say, a bloke called Marcus Ford said, Newman, could you do some research a little better? Because I interviewed Pauline Hanson, and I said she was from the United Australia Party first, and she said, no, I wasn't. I was from the National One Nation or something. And he said, wouldn't it be good if you could do your research properly? So I've just done it incorrectly there. I got Victoria and Mitterrong, or whatever your name was. What is it? I got that round the wrong way. So you didn't change it to show that you were a Victorian. You actually married a man called Mr. Victoria.
I did.
Not Mr. Australia, obviously. Where is he, Mr. Victoria?
Oh, Colombia or something, I think.
You've moved him on.
Yes, long time ago.
Mr. Victoria.
Kept the name, though. It was very good.
I know, that's extraordinary. So what we're going to do is, and Ivan, this is Ivan, his name's Paul, but we call him Ivan, I won't tell you why.
Is that because you're terrible?
Yes,
we'll go with that.
Right.
Well done, Ivan the Terrible. No, the man who used to sit in that seat. The man who used to sit in that seat, Don Scott, who you, Suzanne, spoke to yesterday, didn't you?
The other day, yeah, 2 days
other
ago.
day.
He's going well.
Yeah, and Ivan spoke to him yesterday about seeing if his house hadn't got blown away. Anyhow, Don is a friend of mine. You wouldn't think he is, but he is. But we had a bit of a lover's tiff there, and he vacated the chair and doesn't come in anymore. But he's welcome to come any time he likes.
Is this where you wish him a happy Valentine's Day?
Yes.
I could do that.
You could.
I could.
Well done.
Because I could. You can have a mansplaining. What's that called? Mansplaining? No.
Mansplaining. What the hell are you saying?
Well, you know, men can send best wishes on Valentine's
to your
Day to other
boyfriend.
men, can't they?
That's for your
Yes, of course they
boyfriend.
can.
Or boyfriend. That's right. He could be
Male friend.
Male. That's.
Sam's getting really uncomfortable.
He is,
all of a
isn't
sudden.
he?
Why
He's
did I
shaking in
bring-
his
Squirming
chair.
in your
Why did I
seat
bring
there.
Don up then about what Heidi is there for? Why did I say that? Because I said the man that used to sit there, and then I went on
Ivan.
to say,
Yeah.
"Oh, Ivan."
Well, I was going to say anything.
So Don,
Let him get there. Let him get
Don's
there.
as subtle as a anvil in the agates. Paul here walked in one day because he lives in the tower that I live in, and he said, "Can I come down and just have a look at the podcast?" So he walked in, and Don said, "Jesus, you look like Ivan Milat." And I said, "Look like Ivan Milat." So I've called him Ivan ever since.
Mind you, I've never ever had that once say to me previous to Don, and now everyone says it.
Everyone, he's known as Ivan Milat.
I don't know how many people would know what Ivan Milat looked like.
I didn't, and I looked.
You'd have to look him up.
I looked Ivan Milat up. He looks a dead ringer of him.
I'm doing that when we take a break.
Yeah,
you
he's
know
a
that.
dead ringer.
We're moving right along.
Yeah. So that's it was Don's great contribution to that chair.
Good.
Yeah.
I'll see what I can give you.
Well, you'd only have to bring a topic to talk about, and you will have blown him into the water because he brought nothing.
Okay.
Besides his warped wit and sense of humour and his fact that he's the most eccentric man I've ever met. But he's a very good friend of mine, believe it or not. So what we'll do now is we're going to put a call in over to Eddie Maguire in, I think he's in Dallas, Texas, where I remember this when this happened in 1963 when Lee Harvey Oswald was reputed to have shot John F. Kennedy on the grassy knoll or wherever, I don't know what it is, but I think that was in 63. I remember it. I was at school when the news broke.
Do you think Harvey Oswald did it?
Not at all.
No.
And I think no one else thinks, but they won't. They've suppressed all the information, but who knows, the conspiracy theory. So we're going to ring him now and see, hopefully he answers the phone. So you can put your headphones on, and this is where I hand over to my technical producer, Suzanne Stanley, OAM, because if it doesn't work, we get pretty ticked off. So here we go. Oh,
Hello.
Oh my God, it's worked. Eddie Maguire, this is Sam Newman, one of the people you worked with for a number of years. You're on live on the podcast. I've got Heidi Victoria sitting opposite me. I've got Ivan, who's sitting opposite me, and Suzanne Stanley is. We're all listening to you, and we thought we'd put a call into you, Ed, and ask you why you're in America, how it's going, what's happening, where are you going, how are your kids, and how did you like the Super Bowl?
Well, thank you, Sam, for the notice on this, of course. But you wouldn't actually believe where I am actually standing. And I know people think this is made up, but you've just pulled through to me. I'm actually standing right where Abraham Zapruder was standing on the 22nd of November 1963.
Abraham
You may
being?
remember Zapruder, as in Zapruder's film, where he was the only person who had the vision of the assassination of John F. Kennedy. I'm standing in Dallas, Texas, as we speak. About 10 metres in front of me is a cross in the road where John Fitzgerald Kennedy was assassinated. I'm currently looking up at the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository where Lee Harvey Oswald allegedly fired 3 shots. Shots that rang around the world. You wouldn't believe it. And I'm just standing, Sam, as you rang, reading an excerpt that is on a memorial here of what John F. Kennedy was going to deliver in about half an hour afterwards. He was on his way through the presidential parade and then onto a political meeting, as Heidi would understand, which was, all the big donors. And he was going to say this, and I've only read this for the first time, just when you were ringing, and I was trying to take a photo of it, which while the phone was in the hand, to be perfectly honest. And it says, quote, "We in this country, in this generation, are by destiny rather than choice, the watchmen on the walls of world freedom. We ask, therefore, that we may be worthy of our power and responsibility, that we may exercise our strength and wisdom and restraint, and that we may achieve in our lifetime and for all time the ancient vision of peace on earth, goodwill toward men. That must always be our goal, and the righteousness of our cause must always underlie our strength.
Well,
Whereas written long ago, except the Lord, keep the city, the watchman waketh but in vain." John Fitzgerald Kennedy, what he was about to deliver in Dallas at the trademark later that morning on the fateful day of November 22nd, 1963. Those words may be the reason why they assassinated him.
Well, wouldn't it be great if someone had acted on those words from the day he was going to mention them until the present day?
Well, you would have thought, Sam, but maybe that was why there were certain elements who were quite keen to get to Vietnam and do the opposite of which. So many of the conspiracy theories come together. It's quite amazing. But just to finish on that, it's amazing to stand here because you've seen the film so many times. Earlier today, I was in a car that was taking us on the tour of the city, and they slowed down as we came through Dealey Plaza and then accelerated just as it did in the film. And I've never had goosebumps go through me so much. It was quite incredible.
Just before Heidi just asks you something, I don't want to date myself, if you'll pardon the expression, but I was lying in a dormitory at the school I went to in 1963 and heard the news come over a transistor radio I had in 1963. So amazing you remember where you were at all the great times when Kathy Freeman won the gold and when Kennedy was shot and all, and when they on the moon. I remember watched that in a pub in Geelong. So this is Heidi Victoria, Ed.
And Sam, and of course September 11, we were together on that fateful day as well.
Absolutely
You put a dinner on my behalf after my house had burnt down the day before.
That's correct, with Nathan Buckley, Mick Malthouse, you and me and our partners.
It sounds like an all-star lineup to me.
This is Heidi.
Ed,
hello, Heidi.
Hello. It's lovely to hear your voice, and I'm actually surprised that you never went into politics, because when you were delivering that speech, if you like, off that plaque, it sounded just like Frank, your brother, who of course I served with for many years in the Legislative Assembly here in Victoria, and he gave some amazing speeches. What that man came up with and what came out of his mind, truly quite genius sometimes.
Yeah, well, sadly they didn't act upon some of the great work that he had. Otherwise, maybe we'd be in a better position in Victoria, but that's for another day. But no interest in that, Heidi, but I am interested in bringing back some of the pearls of wisdom that we've been able to accumulate over here, guys, at the Super Bowl, which is why we're ostensibly here en route to visit my son in Ohio. But some interesting things, and it's good that you're there, Heidi, and also Sue as an international sports person. And that is that I'm really worried about Australia at the moment, that what is going on with the Brisbane Olympics, having had the longest lead time of any Olympic Games, that they're going to fritter it away, and that they're thinking about painting the seats at the Gabba as some sort of way of going forward for an Olympic stadium. Having been to what I've seen in Las Vegas and 2 years ago at SoFi Stadium and the Sphere in Las Vegas, the absolute jump forward of what we've seen as far as entertainment and sports entertainment, and with Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, the collision of pop culture and sport is only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. The ratings over here for the Super Bowl, with all that happening, was the second biggest rating in American history behind man landing on the moon. but you probably remember where you were as well, Sam. And it's quite incredible. Yet we are still bumbling around, reminiscent of when Sir Avery Brundage had to come to Melbourne to whack some heads together in 1955, where he threatened to take away the 56 Olympics from Melbourne because they couldn't decide on Princes Park or the MCG. Finally, we got there, and we've all gone through the hoo-ha of Sydney 2000, and to watch it all happen again, it's quite incredible. But the stadiums these days and the acoustics and the experience is quite incredible. So I pose this to you, Heidi, because at some stage we'll get all the politicians and we'll get the accountants and all those who sit on boards who play safe all the time. We're going to have to do something with the MCG, and I keep talking about putting a roof on it. Now, could you imagine if the Taylor Swift concert was yesterday in Melbourne, what that would have looked like, and the ridiculous nature of what we're looking at by not having 24/7 climate-controlled stadia to be able to take us forward from 2025 to 2055.
Yeah, but how many have we got at the moment in Melbourne? 2, 3? I don't go to that many,
how many do you
sports
need?
things.
Yeah. Well, you should. It drives our economy.
I'll take you to the arts sometimes.
Yeah, I go to that as well. You can do both. And
You can.
But the point I'm making, though, is we've got a chance for Brisbane to actually step up and step forward. And unfortunately, at the moment, what we've got is a situation of people who've been appointed for good or whatever reasons who don't seem to be able to get their act together while the rest of the world is galloping ahead from us, Sam. And I do worry a little bit at times that sometimes we get a little bit caught up in our own private Idaho down in Australia and we're missing the lead on where the world's going.
We've probably taken, our credibility's taken a bit of a belting after the debacle of the Commonwealth Games. People will be looking at us and thinking, what in the hell's going on down under? But Ed, you're quite right. If Taylor Swift had been performing yesterday at the MCG, I drove home from down the coast in torrential rain and thunder. This is after it was 38. Went from 38 to torrential rain and thunder, and I thought, imagine if that had happened it still might, of course, on next Sunday and Saturday, but imagine if that had happened.
Well, Sam, to Heidi's point, she said, did I ever think about going into politics? Yeah, probably. I wrote a Prime Minister's speech when I was in grade 4. But the reason is the frustration involved, and I'm sure Heidi felt this at various stages as well. But, we saw yesterday Melbourne, collapse with the power and all that sort of thing. Now, in 1983, when Ash Wednesday came through, and it's similar again when Black Saturday came through, the major headline in both Royal Commissions were power lines. What do we see yesterday? We just averted another disaster as the power lines again melted down and fell down, put everyone out of power. But the potential for catastrophe now, 1983, Sam. I was in the newsroom as an 18-year-old, and I remember at the time saying, we can never let this happen again. Yet we keep repeating the same thing over again. That's the first hot day we've had over the last few days. We've all been waiting for it, and like clockwork, it comes around again. So, I'm a bit disillusioned when I come over here and see people really stepping up and stepping forward, having left Melbourne behind where, things are really grinding to a halt and the negativity around people. I want to come back and get people fired up and let's get going again because we need to keep our country going forward. But, I'm a bit worried about what's going on in Brisbane. That scares the hell out of me, to be honest.
So, Ed, speaking of great events, I'm a bit ambivalent about the Super Bowl, but and the game. But that's just only me. You were there. You were there with Xander.
I was there.
Yes, and
Yep.
Just tell us. Was it great? Did you enjoy the game? Was the entertainment good? Why did we have two? I think we had a black national anthem. Wait till that happens here. If you want to divide the country, start singing a black national anthem over here along with the real one and see how that goes. How did that go over?
Well, the national anthem went over well with Reba McEntire, and then Post Malone's version of America the Beautiful was fantastic. I probably missed the Black National Anthem going through. I just thought it was a song. I didn't recognise it until I read about it the next day, to be perfectly honest. But the build-up to it was just enormous. Again, the stadium only had 61,000, but it was absolutely beautiful sight lines, the screens, the audio visual, everything about it was just fantastic. It was 4 hours of just a constant assault on the senses. Now, they need to do that because there's so many timeouts and advertising timeouts, and why wouldn't you have an advertising timeout at $9 million a 30-second commercial? But it was just fantastic. And the build-up to it now, it's quite interesting. And again, Heidi, I'd like you to jump in on this one. But 2 years ago, the National Football League, the head of the Gridiron in America, Roger Goodall, had it banned that you couldn't even mention Las Vegas. Followers put a shot in any commercial. They didn't want to have anything to do with it. So clean was their reputation. And of course, now with the instigation of betting and bookmaking, particularly on sports right through the country, 2 years later, suddenly he's calling Las Vegas, Nevada, Sports City, USA. And it's just been really interesting to see, as I said, that collision between whether it's gaming, whether it's pop culture with Taylor Swift and all that halftime entertainment. And Sam, just going back to that, you might remember it's only 5 or 6 years ago that they couldn't get anyone to perform at the halftime at the Super Bowl because of all the Black Lives Matters. And they went to Dr. Dre and did a commercial deal with him. And that's why you see so many black performers now being there, and the level of artists, going through the roof again. So it's interesting. There's always politics within politics and deals within deals when you watch these things.
And it also comes down to money talks.
Yeah, well, that was it. They were able to do a deal with Dr. Dre, and I'm sure it was quite beneficial for the doctor, and the doctor delivered. And so we've got back to it. But I think Maroon 5 one year at one of these Super Bowls, were basically dragooned in to do it at the last minute because no one else would come near it. So it was quite interesting to see all that type of thing. But it was an amazing spectacle, Sam. You've got Paul McCartney in the audience and Justin Bieber and all these pop superstars everywhere, actors. The sports itself was just fantastic. And then, the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and the rest of them were just magnificent on the day. And it was, right down to overtime to get the result. You couldn't get any better in sport. It was fantastic. So many great things to take away from it.
And did you feel, did you feel safe? And was there a lot of, there was a lot of warnings about this Taylor Swift concert coming on here about scamming the tickets and people rolling people over and pinching. How was the security over there?
Sam, you wouldn't have known. It was like going to the easiest day you'd ever been to anything in Melbourne. It was so smooth, and the downloading of the tickets onto the phones, etc. It worked like clockwork. At no stage did I even think for 1 second about safety. It was absolutely seamless. And inside, they've worked out how you do this now so that you don't have to have. At the MCG, for example, you've got to have 1,700 people for a 75,000 capacity MCG for a game of that size to just fill the drinks and sell the chips. Now, it worked it out. I mean, last year we were in trouble at various stages when we just couldn't get any people to be there. What they do now is they've got it where you just walk up, tap on, go through, grab what you want to grab, walk straight out. No cash register at the end, and it's just easy, seamless, and everyone's happy.
Do you like the game?
Yeah, I love it. I love the game. I hosted it back in 1998, Sam, as you might remember.
Yep.
I took over from Don Lane hosting it on 9, so I'm into it, and clearly my son plays it these days.
Yes,
so
we're getting on to him in a minute.
On what's going on.
You might be over there next year. I don't know how it all works. I don't know how the university system works as opposed to the NFL, but you might be over there watching him punt the ball at some stage, Ed.
Well, hopefully for Ohio State, I said to people over the summer that the last 3 games of football I've been to, not including the Super Bowl, the smallest crowd was in fact the AFL Grand Final. That's how big college football is.
Yeah.
The last game I went to see him played was in front of 110,615, which is one of the biggest rivalries between Michigan and, or as we say, that team up north, and Ohio State. And 22.5 million people watching it on the television on CBS. It's for the college football. It's quite amazing. And, where Joe is at Ohio State, their football program alone has got a budget of 160 million US per season. So, it's a whole different category altogether.
Now, I presume, Ed, you're still on the Victorian Special Events Committee or panel, are you?
It's the brother of Heidi. It's Visit Victoria, not Heidi Victoria.
So have you now got things that you might implement for a Boxing Day test or a grand final or another big sporting event at the MCG, having been and seen the Super Bowl and what goes on there and all the hoopla? Bring some things
Sam,
back.
I think the main thing we need to do is get our infrastructure right. And, you can take a long-term view on these, and you can also get a combination of international money coming in to build these things if we don't want to do it that way, if we don't want to be leaning on the government purse all the time, and work it through. I mean, you can actually get the best of all worlds if you think about it. But what we can't do is just go, oh, no, this is the way we always do things, because the world has changed. So certainly, the big thing you take out of it, I say this all the time. And basically, if you've got a stadium that was built before Wi-Fi, you may as well be in Noah's Ark. It's just so out of touch on everything that's going. So AI is going to play a huge role in media and sports. As I said, the technology, what people will expect. Climate change, whether you believe it or not, let's just call it the climate. It's happening around us. You're not going to be turning up to the MCG on Boxing Day like we all used to and hope it doesn't rain if Channel 7 and Foxtel are spending $1 billion on TV rights. You're not going to stand out in 40-degree heat for 8 hours playing cricket. You're not going to turn up. We keep saying to Tasmania, for example, you've got to put a roof on your stadium down there because we want it to look like it's first-class football, not Penguin versus New Norfolk. And people say, it doesn't rain as much. You go, well, you can still see polar bears from there. The next stop is Antarctica. For God's sake, come on, get on with the program. It's more to it, and people are not old-fashioned anymore. They're looking forward, not backwards.
Just for our people who are into the geography of the world, you won't be seeing polar bears down at the Antarctic, Ed. They'll be up in the North Pole. But I get your point. And now, Ed.
Yes.
How did you, the tickets they said started at, this could be apocryphal, but they said they started at $6,000 and then went to $20,000. If you wanted a box, which was catered, and I don't know how many people it held, it was $2.5 million. I don't know if any of that's true or not, but where did you sit and who'd you sit next to, and how did you get the tickets?
Well, there's the $6,000 ones. I would have liked to have found them. No, your money's right on the buzzer, and that's US, by the way, too. So that's turbo dollars, not the peso. And so yeah, that was pretty much right, Sam. Those things. Right? I was sitting behind the end zone, level 1, magnificent view straight up the ground. I actually bought my tickets. There's Craig Hutchison, who has ballpark entertainment. I have connections. Actually, I was lucky enough to be invited to host the NFL International function at the Caesars Palace before the Super Bowl.
You were what, just this weekend?
Yeah,
no doubt about you, Ed. Good God Almighty. That's extraordinary.
What he's trying to say, he was on a freebie.
Oh, well, I don't know about that.
No. Heidi, I paid, don't worry, but I'll be looking for the deduction. But no, was there? So a lot of Melbourne people. Bill Guest was there.
Yeah.
Tony Costello, the famous Australian surgeon. A whole group. There's probably a group of about 80 Australians, largely from Melbourne, who were there, and plenty of Aussies. For some reason, the Aussies have been able to get their hands on the tickets.
Bit like when we went to the World Cup in 2006 in Munich, Ed. One of the great sporting days of my life, when we were sitting with Australians, actually watching Australia play for Australia in the World Cup, which is the biggest sporting event in the world every year.
Well, Sam, you may remember this situation. You and I were standing next to Colin Hay, who wrote I Come From a Land Down Under with Men at Work. And we're just standing there. Colin had played on our show. We did the big footy show from over there. and the field was a sea of green, or of gold, really, because it was Brazil versus Australia, and they were playing all the Brazilian samba music, and then they came up and started playing I Come From a Land Down Under,
And he's sitting next to
crowd
us.
started singing it, and I looked across at him, and he had a tear rolling down his cheek, and I had one going, and you couldn't believe it. You were taking photos, and it was a very Australian moment where a boy from Glasgow was singing a song about it down under being played in Munich against Brazil. It was fantastic.
Ed, what a fantastic report. Thank you so much. I did preempt, when I heard we were going to ring you in Dallas, I did preempt that you'd probably be on the, just looking at the JF Kennedy memorabilia and all that. So in case people thought we set this interview up, I just assumed that if you're in Dallas, Texas, that's about what I remember Dallas, Texas famous for. So it's been a fantastic, thanks very much for a very entertaining call, Ed. Anything else you'd like to add?
Yes, I do. There's one last thing I want to add from my day in Dallas, Texas, as I actually walked past the John F. Kennedy Memorial. And walking down into the city. And that is this. Dallas, Texas was once known as the city of hate after the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And they worked really hard to make things different. They've got a Thanksgiving Square, and that's pretty wonderful. What I did notice, though, and what was emphasised by my tour guide earlier, is that at some stage in life of the town of Dallas, Texas, they decided they would be known for the safety in their streets and the cleanliness. And this is as clean a city as you've ever seen. You walk down, there is bins, around the place everywhere. There's not one piece of paper on the ground. There's not one bit of graffiti. There's a sense of calm, a sense of security. And I thought about this for Melbourne because of where it is at the moment. I think it's, I don't think I'm stepping out of line and saying that it's pretty dirty, and the graffiti has got completely, or when I say graffiti, the tagging and all that caper seems to have gone nuts. But I think we've got to get back to a pretty straightforward proposition. And it's if you stand for something, you stand for nothing. And I think we've got to get back in our city and our state and say, right, what do we actually stand for? What are the standards that we believe in? And what do we want our city to look like? Not rely on, talkback radio or the Herald Sun or the Age or whatever, but what do we really want our city to be? And take control of our city again in that regard. Now, that might sound, Heidi's thinking, geez, he's running for office here, but I'm not. I actually live in our town and I love it. I love our city and I love everything that's positive about it. But I just thought today it was really noticeable to see public art everywhere, beautiful architecture, but particularly the streets. And the other thing about the streets, one-way trams in one or two different areas, not down every single street, bike paths in appropriate places, and the entry and exit of the city is done in a nice way. I'm walking down the street, you haven't heard one car toot its horn, no need to.
Now, Ed,
so I think there's some things we need to learn.
This sounds like some bullet points for a Lord Mayoral run, Ed.
As I've said before, Sam, I think I'd sooner be the president of Carlton than the Lord Mayor of Melbourne.
Ed,
Sally will be very relieved.
And no homeless encampments noticeable in Dallas, Texas, as opposed to a lot of other states in America?
Again, I asked about this because I was intrigued. There was one little area where there was probably, I'll say, 5 people. And what they had done is they said, right, okay, every city will have homeless, but we will actually prosecute the case with the homeless. Are they people who want to live rough? Are they people who have fallen through the cracks in society? Have they got mental health illness that can be cured? Have they got mental health or mental disabilities that are just who these people are? How do we look after them? So instead of just saying, let's hose the homeless out, they've actually gone a little bit beyond the surface and found out who the homeless are and how they could be remedied. And as a result, they don't have a homeless problem in Dallas, Texas.
Ed, it's been fantastic to speak to you, and thank you so much for taking the call. Well, it's Wednesday here at about, mid-morning. Where are you? What year is it over there?
Tuesday, 25 past 4 in the afternoon.
All right. Well, you'll just be about head off to just an early dinner and then repair back to the hotel and have a snooze.
I will do exactly that, Sam. It's been a pleasure. Sue. Thanks for pinning me to the wall with your questioning there.
Yeah, no problem. I don't think I ever got a word in, or neither could Heidi or Ivan. Jesus. Well done, Eddie.
Is Don there?
Who?
Don. No, did you say is Don there? No, Don.
Is Don there?
No, Don.
Okay.
Don, no,
What
don't.
about
Don
Mike?
is gone.
No, we're very
Mike?
happy to
And
speak.
what about Mike? Where's Mike? I can't hear him.
No, and Rod's not here either.
They're all missing in action.
Exactly.
No,
I'm
Ed.
glad I'm still with you, mate. There you go.
No,
Steve. Long term.
Thank you so
long-term
much.
relationship.
All the best. Keep safe, Ed. Keep safe.
See you guys.
Thanks, guys.
See you.
All right, now he's off. I presume he's off. Well, there's a nice snapshot of what's going on over in the States in Ed's life, and he is a star. That man.
Isn't that interesting about the graffiti he says about that? No graffiti over there.
Well,
We had a van turn up today, this morning, and decorated full of graffiti.
I saw that driving around. And in fact, one of the things that he talked about was how easy it was to get into the stadium. And I hear this morning on the news that that there's been some of the last-minute Taylor Swift tickets that were sold yesterday have actually got the wrong sections on them and the wrong levels. So they've got printed on the physical ticket level 2 or section 2 or something, whatever, but they've been sent an email. Can you imagine what it's going to be like at the turnstiles? You've got to produce your email, you've got to produce your ticket. You're not going to know where you're going.
and
It is going to be a
the very
shamozzle.
sophisticated scammers that are operating and making bogus tickets, and that it'll be a nightmare.
Yep.
But it won't worry me because I have great appreciation and admiration.
You're not going?
For Tay-Tay, I think they call her. No, Tay-Tay.
He was planning a picnic outside, but even now that's been banned.
No, not
Can't
allowed.
even do that.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, you're not allowed to be within earshot of Taylor's
Not on the concourse.
voice.
No.
Yep.
This is the world we're living in. This is the state we're living in. It is extraordinary. Anyhow, we might just stop now, and then we'll come back with part 2 of this, and we'll find out why we're all here and what we're going to talk about. I got a whole lot of things to talk about. Just before we finish, he mentioned about the viewing audience over there.
Yep.
So it doesn't, and this would be right because American football, the NFL, is purely a American sport, obviously. So it doesn't rate, but it doesn't rate in the top 10 of audience viewerships television-wide, but that would be obvious when you consider the World Cup is the biggest.
Yep.
The second, that there's billions watch that, the World Cup, billions. The second one, I think, is believe it or not, the Tour de France. Because it's a universal sport,
Yep.
cycling.
A lot of men have sort of fancy themselves in
I think
lycra.
the second one, wait for this,
Yeah.
the second one is the Women's World Cup cricket.
Interesting.
I think, well, wherever it is, that we're talking about people who actually watch the television, and that might be just ahead of or equal with the World Cup cricket final. And then you have, I think, the Summer and Winter Olympics come in somewhere there. And after that, I think you can just raffle them. But you can understand why the NFL I think only it had an audience of about 200 million, did it? Which is extraordinary. But when you consider the billions that watch those other things, but that's not to degrade it. Mind you, I am not a fan of the game. Why the hype about the athletes? They couldn't catch a beach ball.
That's why they're getting so many Aussies over there, because of their skills.
They could not catch a beach ball, and whenever there's a tackle made, they're built like
Steamrollers.
automatons. And then whenever they make a tackle, they all high five one another, and the hoopla and the crap they carry on with. The only way to watch the game is to tape it. You could not possibly watch 4 quarters of football, which takes 6 hours to. You couldn't do it. You have 2.5 minutes action and then 3 minutes of ads. I don't have no idea why it's such an appealing game, but I'm the odd person out. Everyone says they love it. They have no idea what it's about, how it works, but it's To me, it is the most contrived crock of nonsense I've ever seen.
I just couldn't understand they're having different players for different things, and you got to take some off to put some on. It's like our Aussie rules footballers are so well built and so well trained. They get in there and they give all 4 quarters, and you see these guys and they do something, a little bit fancy and maybe fancy, and they're off.
As for I think the quarterback is the person that throws the ball, isn't he? Ivan?
Yes.
The punter just comes and punts. But as for the quarterback, okay, what a very skillful man who, they're men, and can throw the ball just pinpoint accuracy over a hell of a distance. Other than that, what the skills of the people who try and catch the ball after it's how many times do they not catch it or do not judge it?
I have no idea.
Oh, well, I haven't any idea.
Well, have you ever played it?
Of course I haven't played it.
Well, then how can you make an opinion on that? Because maybe there is such a skill involved. Because we grew up on AFL, or you did. So we understand it, we know it, we can feel it, we understand it. But when you watch it on TV, it doesn't look like there's any skill involved, but there has to be.
What an extraordinarily good statement you've made there, and I'm glad you made it. You said, have I ever played it? I haven't played it, but I've played Australian rules football, and me and everyone else that played the game could mark the ball over their head, even with people running at you. That's just discipline of courage. Not talking about me, but we could mark the ball. Unless it actually drops right into their outstretched hands, they have no idea how to catch the ball. They wear gloves. They wear latex gloves that gets with like magnets. When it gets to within a metre of it,
I might even have a chance if they gave me all of that.
I know. So I take your point, Sue. So I've never played it, but I've never been to the moon either, but I know someone else has. I would say that if I
reckon you'd be surprised.
What would you be surprised about?
Well, there'd be a lot more skill involved if you really understood it and really understood
Hang on. So the bloke
come up against them.
The quarterback throws the ball and it spins beautifully like a torpedo punt in our game.
Well, there's got to be skill there.
But
I said that, Heidi. I did say.
So I'm just thinking that's skill number one.
The quarterback is extraordinarily skillful. I did say that.
You did.
What's the famous man's name?
Hardy?
No, the bloody bloke who's just dropped. He's just finished playing.
Is he in with Laurel?
Oh, come on, Tom Brady. So Tom Brady's just, and the bloke who's taken over is fantastic. So I've said they're fantastic. So they throw the ball, Suzanne. They throw the ball like a torpedo punt, and unless it actually hits them between the eyes, they have no idea how to catch it because they have big, strong men running at them. But that's the courage of just watching the ball and suffering the consequences. I have no idea why they say it's so skillful.
But we grew up, as I said, we grew up with it, so we understand, and we know that AFL is more superior than the NFL. That's just because it's our opinion. But if you go over to America, that's their opinion, and they'll have exactly the same of the skill set over there. So I think until you play the game, I'd like to put you in the suit. Go over with Eddie.
I'm not saying we like our game and they like their game. I am saying if you throw a ball at someone here in Australia who is an AFL advocate and devotee, they would catch that ball thrown perfectly to them at 99
Well, I'd probably there'd be.
It happened here with Tom Brady when he was doing his speech here in Melbourne, and he threw it to an AFL person in the crowd.
Don't tell me he dropped it.
And he ran across, caught it, and Tom Brady was like, "Wow, this is amazing."
Well, there you were. Well done, Ivan. I'm glad you had that very
Good
nice
on you,
piece
Ivan.
of
I'm sure there's other fans of AFL fans, other people that missed marking the ball.
You said I'd like to see you dressed up in all that. When I'm telling you this now, and I can include Don in there and anyone else that's.
I love it that he's pointing at me and saying Don, because it's like I was going to say, it's like the ghost of Don.
Anyone else that's been
chair.
anyone else that's played a number of seasons of AFL football. In their prime, you could have put one of those suits on and when Tom Brady threw the ball at you, you'd catch it every single time.
The NFL's are wuzzers.
No, I'm not saying they're wuzzers. I'm saying they're...
Skills, don't they? Like a kicker is a kicker.
Yeah.
It's just
quarterback throws
it's
ball,
the rules
these
that they
other
play.
blockers
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how easy it is to catch anything when you've got all that padding on your shoulders anyway. I remember the 80s, you know. Really hard to do anything with shoulder pads that
It
size.
would be easier because you know that if you're going to get hit, you're going to be protected. In our game, if you jump up and there's someone running at you, although they've dumbed it down now so that, you know.
All the tough AFL players in your day.
They were actually.
They were compared to now.
I was going to say it's a very different game
Anyhow, I'm absolutely
Bit
the
of
odd
biffo on the
person
side.
out. People love it. I wouldn't walk across the street to watch it, but I'm glad people love it. So there we are. So that's that. So we'll come back. We'll come back after this. That was the great Eddie Maguire and grilled severely by Suzanne Stanley and Heidi Victoria and of course Ivan. So that's it for now.